Sarah was on the ground. She was lying sideways in the dirt, tools scattered near her feet, sawdust sticking to her skin. One of the construction workers was frozen, mouth open, phone in his hand but not moving, and there was blood, not a little, not a scratch, a dark red stain spreading across her blouse, right under her left shoulder. It bloomed like ink in water, soaking through the fabric, turning everything red. "Sarah!" I screamed. I still remember the day she moved in. It was a Saturday, late morning, sky painted in that soft summer blue, the kind that usually calms your nerves. Sarah had just finished trimming the roses, and I was in the garage trying to fix a stubborn hinge on the side gate. It should have been a normal day. It could have been just another peaceful chapter in the quiet life we'd built on our street. But then she arrived. A dusty beige minivan screeched to a halt across the street, dragging a U-Haul trailer behind it like it was running late to ruin someone's life. And stepping out of the driver's side, there she was. Karen. At the time, we didn't know her name. But everything about her practically screamed it. She had that haircut, the infamous one. Short, platinum blonde bob with razor-sharp edges like she was ready to slice through any poor soul who got in her way. Giant sunglasses that swallowed half her face. Cell phone glued to her ear. And the way she pointed and barked orders at the two teenage boys who stumbled out of the back, probably her kids, like they were paid help instead of family. That told me everything I needed to know. "I give it a week before she complains about the trees," Sarah muttered to me with a dry smirk, wiping her hands on her gardening apron. I chuckled. I wish she'd been wrong. The first real sign of trouble came on day 2. It was early morning. Like before, I've had my coffee early. I stepped outside to grab the paper and almost tripped over a yellow post-it note stuck to our mailbox. "Please trim your hedges. They're an eyesore." A concerned neighbour. No signature, just that passive-aggressive sting masked in a smiley-face sticker at the corner. I knew it was her. Nobody else in our cul-de-sac would do something so petty and anonymously, no less. Sarah laughed it off. Let her nitpick. That woman screams control issues. She probably alphabetizes her cereal. We ignored it. For a while. But that post-it was just the match. What followed was a slow burn, a series of tiny, calculated moves that built into something darker, something that at the time I couldn't imagine would end in blood. It started with the bushes. We had a row of rose bushes along the property line. Sarah adored them. She pruned them every other week, kept them blooming like clockwork. One morning we woke up to find 3 of them snapped in half at the stalk. Just gone. I stared at the broken stems like I was looking at bones. Max, our dog, barked non-stop that night before, but I brushed it off as raccoons or a stray cat. Now I wasn't so sure. Sarah didn't say a word. She just stood there, shaking, clippers in her hand, jaw clenched so tight I could hear her teeth grinding. I offered to replant them, but she shook her head. No, she wants a reaction. Let's not give it to her. God, I wish we had. Next it was the trash. Ours started mysteriously ending up knocked over every Friday morning. Then our mailbox was left open repeatedly, enough that our letters would get soaked by the sprinklers. I started installing security cameras. Nothing fancy, just a couple of wide-angle cams facing the front yard and driveway. Sarah wasn't happy about it. We shouldn't have to live like this. I know, I told her, but we do. Then came the shouting. One night around 9 p.m. I heard a banging on the fence. Max started growling. I peeked out the window and saw her, Karen, standing in her driveway, flashlight aimed directly at our house, yelling at someone on her phone. "She's doing it again! Letting that mutt bark all night! I'll file a report, I'll have them fined!" Sarah stepped out onto the porch. "Is there a problem?" Karen turned, flashlight beam cutting across Sarah's face like a spotlight. "Yes, your dog is keeping me and my sons awake. Again, if you can't control your animals, maybe you shouldn't own any." Sarah didn't flinch. Max barked once. Once. Maybe your problem isn't the dog, it's the hate bubbling out of your own miserable little skull. I had to pull Sarah back before things escalated. Karen stood there, unmoving, a thin smile spreading across her face. She was baiting us, and we were falling for it. After that night, things got uglier. We found more notes. On the windshield of my truck, slipped under our doormat, left between the slats of our porch railing. Some were just petty complaints. Your lawn is uneven. Please repaint your shutters. Your wind chimes are disruptive. But then they turned venomous. People like you don't belong here. You think you're better than everyone else. You're not. Watch your step. Each one was signed the same way, a concerned neighbour. Like it was some twisted inside joke. I started documenting everything. Every note, every incident. Took pictures. Printed screenshots. I logged it all into a black notebook I kept by my desk. Just in case. Sarah was still trying to hold on to normalcy. She worked late most days, spent her weekend sketching renovation plans for the house, plans that would never be realised the way we intended. Then came the day the mail stopped arriving. 2 weeks, no letters, no bills, nothing. When I went to the post office, the clerk gave me a confused look. There's a hold on your delivery, submitted online. I never submitted it. I filed a report, and that's when things finally crossed the line from harassment to warfare. I confronted her that evening. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just asked her if she had anything to do with our mail being stopped. She just smiled, tilted her head. Maybe it's just the universe telling you to mind your own business. That night, I filed for a cease and desist, sent a copy through a lawyer. I figured maybe it would scare her into backing off, but I underestimated her. I thought I was dealing with a nosy, bitter suburban tyrant with too much time on her hands. I didn't know she was unraveling. I didn't know she was dangerous. The first time I truly realized Karen was dangerous, not just annoying, not just toxic, but truly unhinged, was the night of the smoke. It had been a quiet week. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like a trap being set. Sarah and I had just started sleeping better again, if only by pretending she didn't exist. The cameras hadn't picked up anything unusual. Max stopped barking at night. The notes had stopped too. It was like she'd vanished into her house, simmering. But the thing about storms is they're always silent right before they hit. It was around 2:40 in the morning when Max started howling. Not barking, howling, loud, frantic, his nails scratching at the back door like he was trying to claw his way out. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window. That's when I saw the orange flicker. At first I thought it was a reflection, a trick of the streetlights. Then I smelled it. Acrid, thick smoke crawling through the air vents like fingers curling around our throats. "Sarah, get up! Now!" She bolted upright. "What is it?" "Smoke. Something's burning." I sprinted down the hallway barefoot, heart hammering, and threw the back door open. Our shed. It was our goddamn shed. Flames were licking up the wooden siding, swallowing it like it was paper. The fire had already started spreading to the lawn, embers drifting up into the black sky like fireflies from hell. I grabbed the hose, turned the valve, and nothing came out. She'd cut the line. I didn't even have time to curse. Sarah was already on the phone with 911, giving them our address in that clear, controlled voice she used when she was scared, but trying not to sound like it. I grabbed a blanket, soaked it in the kitchen sink, and ran back out to beat at the flames like it would do anything. By the time the fire department showed up, the shed was gone. The corner of our fence was gone. Some of the siding on our house was scorched black. Max had to be held inside. He was shaking, whining, pawing at the back door like he thought we were still out there dying in the yard. We gave statements. The police poked around, took notes, said the usual bullshit. "We'll investigate." I showed them the notes, the camera footage, the slashed hose. They nodded like it mattered, but I could see it in their eyes. No one was going to jail over a shed. Not yet. Sarah curled up in bed that night and cried into my chest. "She's going to kill us," she whispered, "one step at a time, and no one stopping her." I didn't say anything, because she wasn't wrong. The fire marshal ruled it arson within 2 days. Unofficially, one of the guys told me there were traces of accelerant in the grass line between our property and Karen's. I filed a police report, again. We begged for a restraining order, again. Our lawyer submitted everything we had, and the court finally agreed. A temporary order. She was to stay 100 feet away. No contact. Violations would be criminal. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of control. That flicker died quick. The night the order was served, she stood in her driveway for over an hour. Just stood there, arms crossed. No phone, no movement. Just her pale face glowing under the porch light, staring across the street, watching our house like a vulture waiting for a body to stop twitching. I watched her from the upstairs window, and she smiled. That smile, God, I'll never forget it. It wasn't rage, it wasn't panic, it was worse, it was confidence. She was planning something, she knew something we didn't, and I was starting to understand we weren't playing by the same rules anymore. The HOA gets involved and makes it worse. When the HOA president came knocking 3 days later, I thought he was coming to check on us. You know, the human thing. Instead, he handed me a letter. We have received multiple complaints regarding your property, visible scorch marks, an unsightly shed ruin, and excessive security camera usage. He even had the gall to cite disruption to neighborhood aesthetics. I just stared at him. Our house was attacked, I said. Someone set fire to our yard. Yes, he said with a stiff nod. That's why we're encouraging you to resolve it as quickly and quietly as possible. Quietly. They didn't want trouble. They didn't want headlines. They wanted us to disappear into our trauma so the neighborhood could pretend it was perfect. Karen was winning. And I could feel Sarah slipping. She stopped going outside, stopped working on her sketches. She just sat. Sometimes on the couch, sometimes in the shower with the water off. Max stayed next to her like a shadow, silent and loyal, watching the front windows while she stared at nothing. That's when I started sleeping with a baseball bat beside the bed. We fight back. We couldn't live like ghosts anymore. So I doubled down. I upgraded the cameras, added night vision, motion tracking, cloud backups. I filed another report with the city, this time attaching everything. The fire report, the slashed hose, the shed debris, the restraining order, even the HOA letter. I sent it to every department I could think of, zoning, fire marshal, code enforcement, and the DA's office. And then I made a mistake. I posted everything online, not just on Nextdoor, not just a private group. I made a full blog, photos, videos, a timeline, scanned police reports. I called it Living Next to Madness, the Karen Next Door. Within a week it went viral. Thousands of views, comments pouring in, messages of support, people sharing their own stories. Local reporters reached out. One even came by for an interview. We were finally being heard. That's when Karen snapped. The rock through the window. It happened at 3:17 a.m. We were asleep, finally getting real sleep again, when glass exploded in the hallway. Max went feral, barking like he was possessed. I ran out in time to see the shattered remains of our front window and a rock lying in the middle of the hardwood floor. Taped to it was a single note. Liars burn, watch your mouth. She'd crossed the 100-foot line. She'd crossed every damn line. The cops came. They actually arrested her this time, booked her, took her in for questioning. She was charged with criminal harassment, violation of a protective order, and destruction of property. She made bail. Of course she did. The system wasn't made for people like us. It was made for people like her. Manipulative, calculated, just crazy enough to terrify, but not enough to lock up forever. Sarah sat on the couch that night with Max's head in her lap. "We need to move," she said softly. "She's not going to stop." And for the first time, I didn't argue. I agreed. But we never got the chance, because what came next changed everything. The day it happened, God, I wish I could forget it. It started like any other Tuesday, blue skies, warm air, the faint sound of lawnmowers in the distance. It felt normal. That's the part that messes with me the most. It felt like we were safe, like we'd survived the worst of it. We were fools. Sarah had taken the morning off work. She was supervising some final repairs being done to the rear side of the house, the same side that got scorched when the shed burned. The crew had finally gotten around to rebuilding the back deck, and she wanted to make sure the framing matched her original design. I was inside at the dining room table with coffee and blueprints, trying to get back into a rhythm with my freelance clients. Max was napping by the back door. A slice of sunlight had landed on his fur, and he looked so at peace that I remember feeling, just for a moment, grateful. Like maybe, just maybe, things were turning around. That's when he started barking. Not the usual bark. Not the hey, a squirrel bark. This one was deep, primal, his hackles rising, his nails scratching at the floor like he was trying to dig his way through the tile. "Max," I said, already pushing back from my chair, and then I heard it. Crack, a sound like the air splitting open. It wasn't fireworks, it wasn't a car backfire. It was sharp, direct, a gunshot. My blood turned to ice. I ran. I didn't think, I just ran toward the noise, toward the back door. I shoved it open, and time stopped. Sarah was on the ground. She was lying sideways in the dirt, tools scattered near her feet, sawdust sticking to her skin. One of the construction workers was frozen, mouth open, phone in his hand, but not moving. And there was blood. Not a little, not a scratch. A dark red stain spreading across her blouse, right under her left shoulder. It bloomed like ink in water, soaking through the fabric, turning everything red. "Sarah!" I screamed. I dropped to my knees beside her. My hands were already pressed against the wound before I even realized what I was doing. She gasped, her eyes wide, locked on mine. She tried to say something. Her lips moved, but all that came out was a tiny whimper. I was shaking so hard I could barely keep pressure. My voice cracked. "Stay with me. Baby, stay with me. Please. Please." The contractor snapped out of it, finally calling 911. He was yelling something about a woman with a gun, a neighbor. I turned to look in the direction he was pointing. That's when I saw her. Karen. She was standing on the edge of her yard, just behind her white picket fence, holding a small black pistol in one hand like it was a remote control. Her face, it was blank, empty, like she was watching a bug die, and then she smiled. A twisted, sick smile that had no joy in it. Just satisfaction. She didn't run. She didn't move. She just stared at us, at Sarah bleeding in the dirt, and tilted her head slightly, like she was admiring her work. Max was barking his damn lungs out behind me, nearly tearing through the screen door, teeth bared. But I didn't move. I couldn't. All I could do was hold Sarah's hand and whisper that everything was going to be okay, even though I didn't believe it. The ambulance and the arrest. The sirens came fast. I barely remember the paramedics showing up. I just remember being pulled away from her, yelling, fighting against the hands trying to separate me. One of them told me she was breathing, that they had her, that I needed to let them work. They loaded her into the ambulance, IVs already in, and I climbed in after her, my hand never leaving hers. Her grip was weak, her skin was cold. She never fully lost consciousness, but she floated in and out, eyes fluttering, lips moving, trying to stay awake. The hospital was chaos, beeping machines, nurses barking orders, bright white lights that made everything feel even more surreal. They rushed her into surgery. I sat in a plastic chair, covered in her blood, holding a clipboard they'd handed me, like I was supposed to be able to think clearly enough to write her insurance information. I couldn't even remember my own birthday. 2 hours. That's how long it took. The surgeon came out, looking tired but calm. "She's stable," he said. "The bullet missed her heart by less than an inch. It fractured her scapula and tore through some major muscle. But we were able to stop the bleeding. She's very lucky." I collapsed against the wall and sobbed like a child. Back at the scene. When I returned home that night, Sarah sedated and recovering, I found flashing red and blue lights still flooding our street. Karen had been arrested at the scene. She never resisted, never spoke, but as they cuffed her, she laughed. Not a soft chuckle, not an embarrassed giggle, a full-blown, high-pitched, hysterical cackle that echoed down the street. "She got what she deserved," she screamed. "That bitch! Always watching, always judging. I had to. I had to." Neighbors watched from their porches in stunned silence. Even the cops looked disturbed. When they put her in the cruiser, she started singing. A children's song, I couldn't place it. Something about ashes, I wanted to puke. The story spread like wildfire. TV crews, reporters, people camping out near the sidewalk hoping for a quote. The blog I'd made exploded. 10 times the traffic, now with people begging for updates, offering to help, or sharing their own horror stories. And suddenly, everything changed. The police who once shrugged us off started calling every day. The DA's office promised an aggressive prosecution. The restraining order upgraded to a full no-contact provision with criminal enforcement. Bail denied. Karen was finally behind bars. But it didn't feel like a victory, because Sarah still hadn't woken up. I used to think surviving the shot would be the worst part, that if we could just get through the blood and the surgery and the screaming, everything after would be easier. I was wrong. What came next was a different kind of hell. Not loud, not sudden, but slow, silent, like sinking in tar. Hospital days and sleepless nights. Sarah didn't wake up for almost 2 days. I never left her side. I sat in that stiff vinyl chair, holding her hand, watching the rise and fall of her chest like it was the only thing keeping me alive. Every beep of the heart monitor stabbed through me. Every doctor who walked in with a clipboard made my gut twist like they were bringing news I wasn't ready to hear. When she finally opened her eyes, I thought I imagined it. Just a flutter, a barely there motion. "Sarah?" I whispered, afraid to move. "Hey! Hey! I'm here!" Her eyes moved toward me. Dull, tired, but there. She tried to speak, but it came out as a hoarse rasp. "You're okay," I said, fighting tears. "You're going to be okay." And that's when she started crying. Physical therapy and emotional scars. The bullet had torn through a bunch of muscle. Her left arm was useless at first, couldn't raise it past her ribs. They warned us about nerve damage, said it might be permanent. They handed her a schedule for months of physical therapy, a list of medications, and a folder full of follow-up appointments. She nodded through it all without saying much. But when we were alone, she finally looked at me and whispered, "She tried to kill me." I didn't know what to say. I think I just nodded, because what the hell do you say to that? There's no Hallmark card for "our neighbour tried to murder you." The legal machine begins to turn. 2 detectives visited us in the hospital a few days later. One older, one younger. They brought updates, a statement form, and a box of donuts like we were co-workers catching up over coffee. I gave my statement, every gritty, miserable detail. So did the contractor who'd seen it all. Karen's gun had been legally purchased years ago. She had no prior record. The footage from our security cam showed the exact moment she pulled the trigger. She confessed, loudly, on the scene. Neighbours overheard it. They had her dead to rights. "She's going away for a long time," the older cop said, tapping the folder. "We'll make sure of it." But I could already see it in his eyes. The doubt, the weariness. They'd seen people like her walk before. The first court hearing. She was arraigned 2 weeks later. I wanted to go. I wanted to look her in the eyes and let her see that she hadn't won. But Sarah begged me not to. She said she wasn't ready to feel that kind of rage again. So I stayed home and watched it unfold on the local news. They showed her shuffling into the courtroom in a beige jail jumper. Her hair was a mess. She looked smaller, shrunk down. But her eyes, God, those eyes, still burned with that same wild spark. She pled not guilty. Her lawyer, a sharp-looking man with slicked-back hair and a smug grin, told the press she was under immense psychological strain and would be pursuing a mental health defense. And just like that, the machine started grinding. Public opinion turns murky. The media twisted it fast. Headlines like "Troubled Widow" or "Dangerous Criminal," the suburban shooting that shocked a neighborhood. Did HOA harassment drive this woman over the edge? Mental health crisis or malicious intent. They dug into everything. Her late husband's death, her history with anxiety, even our blog. One station quoted one of my old posts completely out of context to make it sound like we were bullying her. I stopped watching after that. A month after the shooting, Sarah had a breakdown in the kitchen. She dropped a plate. It shattered on the floor. She just stared at it, shaking, and then crumpled to her knees and screamed. I ran in, knelt beside her, tried to calm her down. She just kept saying, "I can still hear it. I still hear the shot," over and over. I thought I was going to die. I held her until the shaking stopped. After that, we both started therapy. Karen writes us a letter came in the mail, forwarded from the county jail. Typed, single-spaced, 3 pages. It started with, "You ruined my life." She claimed we had been tormenting her from day one, that Sarah had been watching her and sabotaging her social standing. She said she didn't mean to kill anyone, but that she had to do something. The final line read, "Maybe now you'll learn what it feels like to be powerless." I didn't show it to Sarah. I burned it in the sink. The trial date gets set. 6 months out. That's how long the court system needed. Karen's lawyer was pushing for a full psychiatric evaluation. Our attorney warned us it might get ugly, that if the defense could paint her as mentally unfit, she could end up in a hospital instead of prison. "You need to prepare yourselves," he said. "The system doesn't always reward the victims." But we weren't backing down. The house rebuilds, but we don't. Construction continued. Sarah oversaw most of it, one-armed, determined as ever. She picked out new paint colours, new fixtures, even redesigned the deck to include a wide bench where we could sit with Max. but there was a stillness between us. We didn't laugh like we used to. We didn't make stupid jokes about the neighbours. We didn't dream out loud. We just existed. Two people trying to survive something no one should ever have to survive. I had always thought the courtroom was where truth came to light. Turns out it's more like a stage. Everyone's playing a part. And the truth? It's just a script, revised, redacted, repackaged, until it fits the story that wins. And somehow, Karen's lawyer was trying to turn her into the victim. The first day of trial. The courtroom was colder than I expected, sterile, like a hospital for words. Sarah sat beside me, her arm still stiff in its brace, her eyes shadowed by months of sleepless nights. Max wasn't allowed inside, of course, but I swore I could feel him at my side anyway, the ghost of his loyalty pressed into my bones. Karen entered, flanked by guards. She didn't look remorseful or scared. She looked blank, like nothing inside her had changed. Same dead eyes, same faint twitch in her jaw like she was chewing on a secret. Her lawyer rose and launched the first offensive. Karen Albright was suffering from undiagnosed mental illness exacerbated by grief, neighbourly conflict and a toxic environment. They even had a name for it, acute stress-induced paranoia. I clenched my fists under the table. Toxic environment? She set our porch on fire. She stalked us for months. She pulled the goddamn trigger. Sarah takes the stand. When they called Sarah up, the courtroom went silent. She stood slowly. Her limp was more pronounced than usual. She wore a dark blazer to cover the scar, but the pain in her movement was obvious. And when she raised her hand to take the oath, her arm trembled. I watched the jurors. Some winced. Others stared straight ahead. She told them everything. Calmly. Honestly. Her voice shook only once, when she described the moment she saw Karen, gun raised, finger tight on the trigger. She looked straight at me, Sarah said, and she smiled. Karen's lawyer objected, claimed it was a subjective interpretation. The judge allowed it. Afterward, Sarah sat back down next to me. I took her hand. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were still up on the witness stand, like a part of her hadn't come back down. The defense strategy, victim blaming. Next came the character assassination. Karen's team brought in a social dynamics expert who said that HOA disputes often become emotionally triggering environments, especially for vulnerable individuals. They showed emails we had sent to the city about Karen's fence being too high. They implied we were passive-aggressive, overly controlling, elitist. She felt trapped, the lawyer said. Bullied, harassed, like she had no way out. Bullied? They showed a photo of a flamingo we'd planted near her property line as a joke after she yelled about aesthetic pollution. The jury chuckled. I didn't. They weren't there when she screamed at us for it. They didn't see the dead squirrel she left on our porch the next morning. My turn on the stand. When they called me up, I stared Karen down as I passed her. I told the truth. Every ugly bit of it. How she harassed Sarah, how she keyed my truck, how she called the cops over imaginary noise complaints, how she tried to sue us over emotional damage from wind chimes, how she laughed after pulling the trigger. The prosecutor asked if I feared for our lives. Every day, I said. Karen stared at me the whole time, unblinking, like she was daring me to blink first. Cross-examination, twisting the knife. Then came the defense. They twisted my words. They tried to paint me as paranoid. They pulled up an old Reddit post I made years ago venting about crazy neighbours and said I had a bias against older women with strong personalities. Strong personalities? She shot my wife. I snapped. The judge warned me to calm down. The verdict. 2 weeks of testimony, 3 hours of jury deliberation, then silence. The foreman read the verdict aloud. Guilty on all major charges, attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, felony harassment. Not guilty on one minor charge related to property damage. Karen showed no emotion, not a single tear, just turned her head to the wall like none of this had anything to do with her. The judge gave her 25 years. No parole for the first 18. That should have felt like a victory, but all I felt was empty. The aftermath. The press swarmed us again. Microphones, flashbulbs, reporters with fake concern and real hunger. We didn't say a word. We went home, shut the door, and held each other for a long, long time. That night, Sarah asked me, "Do you think it's over?" I didn't have the heart to lie. "I think it's quieter now," I said. And that was true. I thought when the trial ended, things would get easier. Justice was served. Karen was locked up, but no one tells you how slow healing is. How quiet, how heavy. It wasn't over. It was just a new kind of war, this time inside ourselves. We stood in front of the skeleton of our home, charred beams, warped metal, the faint outline of our old living room traced in ash and memory. I remember Sarah holding my hand tightly, eyes hollow, voice barely above a whisper. It still smells like her. It did. Even with the fire gone, the wind still carried a faint, acrid bitterness, like Karen's hate had soaked into the ground. But we rebuilt anyway. Not because it was easy, because we had to. Because letting her destroy it for good would have meant she won. So we started from the ground up. Sarah worked with the new contractors herself, shoulders still aching from the bullet wound, limping slightly as she walked the property, but never once complaining. She redrew every blueprint, redesigned every room. She added thicker walls, reinforced locks, triple-layered glass, motion-activated cameras. Not paranoia. Preparation. I helped where I could. But the truth? She carried us during that phase. She refused to let our home be a grave. The pain that lingers. Some nights we didn't sleep. Sarah would wake up screaming, short gasps, soaked in sweat, eyes wide and unfocused. Other nights it was me. Sometimes I'd see her lying on the ground again, bleeding out. Other times I'd hear Karen laughing outside the window. That sound, the laugh, was the one thing I couldn't scrub from my brain. It wasn't just insane, it was triumphant. Therapy helped, eventually. At first it just made us angry. Our first session, the counsellor asked, "How do you define safety now?" I walked out. It wasn't a question I could answer. But Sarah stayed. And over time I started going back in with her. We learned to breathe again. The neighbourhood changes. Karen's house was put up for sale. The property had been seized and auctioned. No one wanted to buy it at first. The story had gone too far. News stations, Facebook shares, even a local documentary. But eventually, a young couple bought it. They were quiet, kind. They brought banana bread on their first week. They didn't know what happened. Not really. Not all of it. We didn't tell them. Some ghosts don't need introductions. Other neighbours, the ones who used to look the other way, started stopping by more often. Mr. Goodwin helped replant the trees that were scorched in the fire. Mrs. Patel brought hot meals the first few weeks after the verdict. Even Tom, the guy who used to argue with me about trash bins, gave me a solid nod one afternoon as we replaced our mailbox. It was the kind of nod that said, "I didn't get it before, but I do now." Max, our constant. Through it all, Max never left our side. He slept beside Sarah every night, his body curled at her feet like a sentinel. He didn't bark much anymore, but sometimes late at night he'd growl toward the back fence, just once, low and slow, before lying back down. Maybe it was a raccoon. Maybe it was memory. Either way, he kept watch. The day the house was finished, we stood in our new kitchen, the windows open, the air smelling of paint and lemon oil. The walls were fresh, untouched. The cabinets were ones Sarah had always dreamed of. The patio out back was bigger now, with a raised garden and 2 chairs perfectly angled toward the sunrise. It was home again, not the same home, but ours. Sarah reached for my hand and whispered, "We made it." I squeezed back, hard. And yet, some things won't go away. I still check the locks twice. Sarah still flinches at loud pops, fireworks, construction, even a car backfiring. There's a scar on her shoulder she hides beneath a tattoo now. A phoenix, wings outstretched. "You burned my house," she once told Karen in court. But I survived. Now the world can see it too. What comes next? We live quietly now. No HOA meetings, no neighbour drama, just early morning coffee on the porch, Max at our feet, and the slow, steady rhythm of a second chance. Some days are still hard. Healing isn't a straight road, but every step forward is one she didn't take from us. It's been 367 days since the shooting. I know that number because I marked it. Every single one. On a calendar that still hangs inside our new pantry door, ink bleeding slightly from the days I pressed too hard. I didn't intend to keep counting, but some scars won't let you forget. A new normal. Sarah's doing better. She moves without the limp now, most days. The nerves in her left arm still go numb when she's cold, but she doesn't let it stop her from gardening. Her tattoo is healing too, deep red and black, stretched wings across her shoulder blade. She let me watch while the artist finished it, tears gathering at the corner of her eyes, jaw clenched. Not from pain, from remembering. We don't talk about Karen anymore. Not really. We moved forward, brick by brick, heartbeat by heartbeat, until the letter came. The envelope. It arrived without warning. No return address, just our names, printed in shaky handwriting on a plain manila envelope. I didn't want to open it. I stood in the hallway for nearly an hour, just holding it, my stomach tight. Sarah was in the kitchen. She saw me, saw the look on my face, and said only one word. Her? I nodded. She didn't cry, she didn't rage, she just walked over and sat beside me. Let's read it together. The letter. David and Sarah, I know you hate me. I know you want me dead. Sometimes I do too. They've put me somewhere with locked doors and quiet rooms. People talk slowly here, like I'm made of glass. I don't scream anymore. Mostly I whisper. There's a woman here who thinks I'm her sister, another who talks to birds in the hallway. I don't laugh with them. I don't talk much at all. But I think a lot. About you, about what I did. They say I was sick. They say the stress broke me, that I didn't mean to hurt her. But I did, and I remember it, the sound, the blood, her eyes. I see it every night when I close mine. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve peace. But I wanted you to know I'm not laughing anymore. I don't even know who I was that day. I'm sorry. We didn't say a word for a long time after reading it. Then Sarah folded the letter in half, walked outside, and burned it in our fire pit. She stood over the flames until only blackened flakes were left, floating into the air like ash-winged insects. I didn't stop her. We didn't speak about it that night. We didn't need to. People talk about closure like it's a door you shut, a box you tape up and shove on a shelf. But closure is quieter. It's Max curled up on our bed without flinching. It's Sarah planting new rose bushes. It's me walking into the hardware store without scanning every aisle like I used to. It's not forgetting. It's surviving. Final thoughts. I still don't know if she meant that apology. I don't know if she even understands what she did. But I do know this. She didn't win. We're still here. Still living. Still loving. And our story didn't end with a gunshot. It began again, through fire, through fear, through fury. We came out stronger. Together.